Oh, and 1, and 2, and 3. What's happening, my fellow geeks and geekettes? Welcome to a brand new episode of Chris's Custom Collectibles. And today we are going to be pimping out and doing a dynamic diorama on the Jada Toys Hollywood line series Batmobile die cast vehicle from the Batman. Look at this beast and a half. And it also comes with this pissy little Batman action figure. So I kid you not, the body is made out of metal and the arms are plastic. It just looks really weird. Oh, and 1, and 2, and 3. Look at that, no shame. Just in right whiting, fuck it, let's just put it inside the case. So before I get to what we're gonna do to the Batmobile and the diorama to follow, in terms of this figure, I'm actually going to be cutting him in half and putting him in the driver's seat because for the most part, you are not going to see him. It's going to be reflections and stuff from the windshield, and I just want it to be a silhouette once everything's done. I don't want to take away from the beauty that is this beautiful die cast vehicle. So now that that's out of the way, let's get back to the car. This is a beautiful representation of Robert Pattinson's Batman Batmobile. You can turn it on like so, which is beautiful. These lights are going to help with the final look of the diorama. This is actually on try me mode, so you've got to flick it into the middle like that. Doors open, which is great because obviously we want to put that half Batman figure inside, and then also the beautiful detail of the engine. So in terms of customizing the car, it's mostly going to be detail work, dry brushing, and doing some mud on the tires, kind of spitting up on the sides of the body of the car here. So that is pretty straightforward, pretty simple. You guys have seen me do that before, but obviously I want to include that in the video process. In terms of the diorama, this is our inspiration. That awesome clip that's been released online. We've also seen this shot in trailers of the Batmobile blaring and barreling through that fireball from the tanker truck that he just smashes over with that ramp when he's chasing Oswald Cobblepot, aka the Penguin. I love the fact that they did this practically. It's a beautiful looking stunt, so it's going to involve, as per usual, LED strips, pillow stuffing, but I also want a nice museum quality base. I'm actually going to be utilizing the logo from the box that this came in, recycling at its finest. So before we start work on this guy, we're actually going to do some prep work on the base. So with that being said, let's get to it. Ooh, you know what time it is. It's time for some shitty commentary. So this is going to act as our base. This is an MDF craft book. It's supposed to be like a display piece, but also act as some storage. And that is exactly what we're going to be doing. This is going to double as storage. So this is going to emulate the road. So for the first step in prepping this for the actual finished piece for the diorama, we're going to spritz on some flat black Rust-Oleum spray paint. So I'm actually going to be leaving this around the sides of the actual box because I want that wood grain to kind of bleed through. Now, once this started to dry, I went ahead and started to cut out this certain piece from the box that the actual car itself came in. So we're going to be utilizing the logo, the Batman logo right there at the front of the box, and just carefully cutting it as best and as neatly as I could with a Stanley knife. And I'm also keeping that piece of clear plastic on the back. So that is going to act as a support backing for when we glue that actual logo to the front of the box. So I just feel that that is just going to give it a bit more structure when we adhere it. So I remove the excess there and the rest is just still stuck on the back. Pretty straightforward. Now I've gone ahead and taped off the sides of the actual box, the book box. So we're going to grab some Duramax Granite Effect. You guys have seen me use this so many times. This is a great starting base for like roads, gravel and stuff like that. And I really built up the layers on this one. You can go pretty light with this stuff sometimes and get a pretty good looking effect with granite, but I really wanted to have this kind of chunky asphalt kind of look, like, you know, a proper old dingy road. Even though it is very grey and very bright to start with, you'll see in later in the video that I'll go back in with some black artist oils. So I don't like to keep masking tape on pieces for a very long time, so I literally was unmasking this about 2 minutes after spraying this stuff because I just don't want it adhering to the paint. Now, in terms of doing over the Batmobile, it's pretty straightforward. Like, most of this will be covered by LEDs and pillow stuffing, but it's kind of just nice to have all that detail sitting under there. So our main pieces here to customize this is silver rub and buff and brown acrylic paint. So for the silver rub and buff, you know what we're going to be doing. We're going to be dry brushing on and highlighting certain parts of the actual Batmobile, most notably the bonnet right there. There's that beautiful detailed panel there on the bonnet of the Batmobile, and also going around just certain edges, and also the back of the engine. Again, even though this thing is going to be covered up, it still looks so good once I dry brush that silver rub and buff on that flat sort of gunmetal grey base that was on it. Now the next step is we're going to be doing some mud effects, like mud spitting up from the tires, and that was just a matter of watering down that student acrylic you see right there and flicking it on with bristles from a brush, and also just going in on the tires with that actual acrylic. And once it was dried, it blended into the body of the car so well. Again, just be creative with it, let it tell a story. Like, you know, he's gone through a big muddy puddle, and that is how it looks when it dries. How good does that look? It's not too over the top. It kind of blends in just perfectly right. Again, you're not gonna see much of this, but still, devil is in the details, geeks and geekettes. Now, when it came to cutting the actual Batman figure in half, I worked up the biggest sweat ever. But before that, we cut his arms off and cut the excess of the cape off, because we're going to be housing him in the driver's seat, and we just don't need it. This was some hard shit to cut, and I was sweating by the end of it. This took about a good 10 minutes to cut with rest time, but we got there in the end. He looks so silly in there. I don't know why. Now that we've let the granite effects properly dry, I'm just gonna go in with some black oil color and just stain certain areas, because this is a little bit too clean and a little bit too uniform for my liking. You know, from what I can see in screenshots and from that clip they released online of Batman chasing down Oz in the Batmobile, it's a very dark looking road, but this is a perfect blank canvas. So again, we're just gonna be using some black oil color with a chip brush, just sporadic on areas, just make it look unnatural, stuff like that, but try not to make it too distinctive if you're using this method, from saying going from somewhere really dark to this fresh color. You kind of got to blend it all together, and then I'm going to seal that up with a matte sealer. Now, you don't want too much on your brush. It's kind of essentially almost like dry brushing, because oil color really does spread. It does go quite a long way. There we go, that's beautiful. It's exactly what I'm after, just sporadic parts, and also like oil spills here and there that would be on the road. I'm guessing it's a road or a highway from the trailer. Now I'm tinkering with the idea of adding gloss, like a clear casting resin that I've got handy in the apartment here that could act as puddles, have certain parts really wet and have a puddle, stuff like that, because from what I've seen, the ground is quite wet, and crew do wet the ground for film. It just helps reflect the light better and just looks more aesthetically pleasing, quite frankly. So I'm pretty happy with how that's looking, actually. It only took about a minute. Okay, the next step is mounting the Batmobile to the base. But before I go any further, the reason why I do use a matte sealer over oil color, because you can get to work without oil color getting on your hands within about 10 minutes. The matte sealer seals it in. You don't have to worry about it drying, because usually oil color takes about 24 hours to dry. And I know I mentioned I want to put some puddles here and there. I'm going to do that after I mount the Batmobile. So with that being said, we're using these mounting pieces here. Got them from Bunnings Warehouse, and I also have an aluminium tube that I cut to size that is going to house the Batmobile. This piece here will screw to the Batmobile, but firstly, let's screw this piece in. It's completely centered. I've positioned it exactly where I think the Batmobile is going to sit pretty well. So there is a bit of an angle on this end. So this end here is going in the bottom, and the reason being, it kind of moves the pipe forward, and it's just going to angle the Batmobile ever so slightly. I don't want it perfectly flat like it's hovering like the DeLorean from Back to the Future. It just kind of makes more sense that it would sit that way. So let's attach this bad boy to the undercarriage of the Batmobile. So we're going to be using two different types of glue to adhere the aluminium pipe inside the holder here. So for the base inside, we're going to be using clear grip Gorilla Glue. This is not like the shit I tried to use last time on the Leatherface mask. This stuff is great. It's very hard to find though. It sells out very quick in Bunnings Warehouse. That's why I've kept this tube, and it's all manky. You still want to squeeze every little bit out. So like I said, we're just going to squeeze some on the inside like so, and it'll catch the base of the aluminium pipe when I pop it in there and position it in place. Keep in mind, all this is going to be covered with pillow stuffing, so you don't have to be precisely neat, though you kind of want to make it look presentable. Make sure that's positioned forward. And then we're gonna grab our cheap and nasty super glue and just go around the perimeter with it. So what I ended up doing was putting a layer of the cheap and nasty super glue on, letting that dry, and then doing an extra layer of the Gorilla Glue, and now that's dried. And it's weird, it's like almost a chemical reaction, and they've just kind of fused together, and this thing is not going anywhere. So I'm gonna repeat this process on the bottom of the Batmobile. So now we're going to mix up our clear casting and embedding resin just to give the illusion of a wet surface and puddles here and there, and we're going to let it sit overnight. So this is a Prototype brand. We have the actual resin, and then we have the hardener catalyst. So this works by a chemical reaction. It's not one of those things where it's like Supercast or Bee Queen where it's mixed ratio 100 to 100 and you've got like 5 minutes working time. Stuff like this takes a good couple of hours, and a proper cure is a good 24 hours if that. So you only need a few drops of the hardener in there. We're not going to put much in this cup anyway, but I do just want to have some shine to it. I think also when the LEDs are bleeding through the pillow stuffing and it's making it look like an explosion, it's going to reflect nicely off the surface. So in theory, it should all look pretty good when it's all done and dusted. But in terms of this stage, it's pretty straightforward. Okay, we've now let the resin properly cure overnight, and I'm very happy with how it's turned out. I just went ahead and grabbed the logo that I cut out from the box that the Batmobile itself came in and just glued it on with some cheap and nasty super glue, but I didn't glue it on the top here because I want this to be able to open and close like so. So again, this is gonna double as a little bit of storage. Not much storage, but it's still a bit fun. We still have to go in with the angle grinder when I get back to the workshop and grind off the ends of these screws here and maybe put something on there just a bit more decorative and not as ugly looking, and then closes like so. So the next step is the LED lights. Now I picked up this LED light kit from Kmart yesterday for 20 bucks, and it's a damn good little kit. I put it through the ringer. It has got a lot of functions with colors and flashing lights and stuff like that, but obviously I just want this for the orange, for the fire effect. So this is 3 meters long, which is great. It gives me plenty to work with. So we're very strategically going to glue and set in place all the LED stripping. So we're gonna start at the back here and just work our way around the ground here, and then work our way around, slithering up like a snake up the pole here. I've got screen grabs on my laptop for reference from the actual scene when Batman's chasing down Cobblepot. So we're probably going to come up and maybe go around each side of the Batmobile. Because if you look at the screen grab from the film, majority of the Batmobile is engulfed by flame. Like it comes to about here. I don't want that. I kind of want it back to here because I want it to be as if the Batmobile has just blasted through, and it's kind of as if the smoke is in a wind position, like the wind's blowing against it, or the force from the Batmobile is pushing the smoke back and the fireball back. So there is some creative liberties being taken here, which I'm totally okay with. Because again, this is a beautiful die-cast piece. I don't want to just cover it up to about there. I want the windshield on display, so I probably will have an LED strip on each side. So again, it is one giant snake wrapping around at the back of this Batmobile, but I do want them on each side, going around and then wrapping it around the back. So it's like this big molten fireball at the back that this thing is just blasting through. Now this does have 3M adhesive on the back, but I also am going to be backing it up with some cheap and nasty super glue, especially on pivot points where it's going to bend, because obviously this is a flat strip. When you want to do a bend, it has to be like that. And you also want to make sure you're really careful not to over bend an LED strip, because if you crack one part, the rest of the piece is fucked. So with that being said, let's place this bad boy on the base and the Batmobile. Now this was a very touch and go stage of the custom collectible, and one thing I want to note, you'll see me wrap the LEDs around the front tires and up the sides of the bonnet and the sides of the Batmobile. As you see right there, I eventually changed my mind and unwrapped the whole thing and just ended up wrapping it, you know, on the stem and under the Batmobile and then around the back, because when I went to go and apply the pillow stuffing, it just looks so weird because the LEDs, each individual one on the sides where the front tires were just really bleeding through, and it just didn't look like a fireball. It looked like there were just LEDs under there. And I changed my mind and just got rid of them and then ended up wrapping it all around the undercarriage of the Batmobile and on the back. Alrighty, next up, we're gonna add our pillow stuffing. Now this is just regular pillow stuffing you can get from craft stores, fabric shops and stuff like that. So I'm actually gonna use some adhesive to adhere it down and strategically work with it, place it in certain areas. I'm just using the 3M Super 77 spray adhesive. You can get this stuff from craft shops and Officeworks and stuff like that. So it's just a matter of giving it a light little spritz and it will tack on, and then that way you can work it along the ground as if the smoke is pluming in certain areas as he's whizzing through in the Batmobile. And again, just working your way up and around and until you reach something that looks aesthetically pleasing. Now keep in mind, I am a little bit worried about the intensity of each light bleeding through and it looks unnatural. We will cross that bridge when we come to it, but for now that looks pretty fun, that looks pretty good. Okay, like I said, this process just requires a lot of futzing. So what you can also do is grab a piece of the pillow stuffing and rub it between your hands like you would like with Play-Doh or clay and stretch it out so it's like the smoke is just pluming past the Batmobile. So I might just rip that tip off there. Perfect, looking pretty good. So overall, I'm pretty happy with this. There are some areas where you can add a bit more if the LED lights are bleeding through too much, just to soften it. Just add a bit more spray adhesive and really mush it in there, and then that'll diffuse the light. But now I think it's time to add a bit of shading and then we can call it a day. The last step is spritzing on a bit of flat black, only a little dab will do you, trust me, and then watering down some orange acrylic paint, grabbing my airbrush and just highlighting certain areas of the smoke, and this is going to help emulate the explosion. And now we're good for the final reveal. And there we go, guys, the Jada Toys die-cast Batmobile from the Batman is done and dusted. Very happy with how this turned out. I'm obsessed with the LED/pillow stuffing method to make explosions and stuff like that. It makes me want to do more custom collectibles like that. And of course, we have our beautiful little storage area where I keep my Batman-themed Oreos. With that being said, wherever you are in the world, please have yourselves an absolute cracker of a day. I hope you're well, hope you're happy, be merry, be silly, and until next time, geeks, please always remember, cosplayers do it best.